Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz. This is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Friday, May 17th, 2024. If you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my daily rundown best bet in the MLB, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. There's also a link in the description. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Friday in Major League Baseball. First up, we see the lone afternoon game at Wrigley Field between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Chicago Cubs. This one, Paul Skeens and Kyle Hendricks as the starters. Of course, Skeens making his second start at the Major League level. His MLB debut, when you look at the numbers, you look at the ERA at 6.75, looks like he had a really rough outing, but he had 7 strikeouts and, 2 of the earned runs that he gave up on the final line. He started the top of the 5th inning with giving up a double and a single. He left the game. Nicholas came in, struck out the next 2 guys, but then hit by pitch, walk, and those runs went around to score. So, Skeens, the runs are on his record, but Nicholas was the actual pitcher that, conceded those runs in that 5th inning. So, I still think Skeens, one of the best young pitchers in baseball. The 7 strikeouts in those 4 innings will tell you that. He had 17 pitches over 100 miles per hour in that debut. So I think he's going to be a great option for the Pirates for years to come, and including this season. Now, Kyle Hendricks on the other side has struggled this year. We got that ERA above 10 at 10.04. But he has been somebody that's been considered a Wrigley Field pitcher over the years. It's why he's been a member of the Cubs for so long. And when you look at his last start against the Pirates, now that game was on the road, but it was still a really good sign for Hendricks. It was 5 innings, 1 run, only 2 base hits, 5 strikeouts. You're facing a Pirates lineup here that's been one of the weakest lineups in baseball against righties since the beginning of the season. I think Skeens bounces back as well. I like the under in this Pirates-Cubs game. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Jake Irvin and Zach Wheeler are your starters. Zach Wheeler struggled that last game against the Marlins, 6 earned runs and a home run. It was really a surprise there. He was the Phillies were a giant favorite in that game, against one of the weakest teams in baseball. And it goes to show you, Wheeler's pitching well this year, sub-3 ERA, 4th most strikeouts in the league, .99 WHIP, but the Phillies are still 4-5 in his starts this year. And the Phillies have the best record in baseball to start the season. So for their best pitcher, for your record to be 4-5, that's a concern. To me, when you look at Zach Wheeler, usually, one, he's facing the opposite team's number 1 or number 2 in the rotation most times, so it is going to usually be a tough matchup. But also, with Wheeler at home especially, the Phillies are going to be a giant favorite. And we saw that in Miami. They were, minus 200, minus 250. When you lose those consistently, the 4-5 record, he's been one of the least profitable pitchers in baseball. And with Jake Irvin on the other side, with the Nationals, who have been the most profitable team in the National League, and Irvin, a sub-3 ERA in the row with a 2-0 record, 30 innings of work. His last 5 games, 2 earned runs or fewer in 4 of those 5. The one game he struggled was the second straight start against the Los Angeles Dodgers, who hasn't struggled against the Dodgers, especially when you have to face them twice in the same week. So I don't really put too much weight into that game. I'm going to take the Washington Nationals here, plus the 1.5 runs with a sprinkle on the money line. Next up, we see the Chicago White Sox taking on the New York Yankees. Mike Clevinger and Nestor Cortez are your projected starters. To me, there's a lopsided pitching matchup, and I think the Yankees have the big advantage. Nestor Cortez hasn't been great on the road, but he's been much better at Yankee Stadium. An ERA just below 7 on the road, but a 1.59 ERA and 28 innings of work at Yankee Stadium. Facing one of the weaker lineups in baseball against lefties, I think Cortez pitches well here. Clevinger, a 5.4 ERA. Now, his last game was a lot better against the Guardians, but the Yankees, I think, one of the best lineups in baseball overall, but especially against right-handed pitching. And recently, in the last month or so, top 5 OPS and isolated power. I think they get the Clevinger and the White Sox bullpen. Give me the Yankees on the run line in this one. Next up, we see the Seattle Mariners taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Bryce Miller for Seattle, no official starter for the O's, but I am seeing Cole Irvin listed on ESPN, so he could very well be the starter. Bryce Miller's pitched really well this year, 2.66 ERA. He hasn't always gotten the run support. He hasn't been as strong on the road, but still, he's been very consistent. He's given up 2 earned runs or fewer in 4 of his last 5 starts. The strikeout numbers are there. The home run balls hurt him here and there, but the walks have been, kept to a minimum recently. I think he pitches well in this game. He's also faced a really tough strength of schedule. He faced the Rangers, Braves, and Astros in a 3-game stretch, really good lineups. And even the Oakland Athletics in that last start. Oakland's really improving against right-handed pitching. So, Miller's been put through the ringer, honestly, in his last few games. Not going to get too much easier against the Baltimore Orioles here, but when you look at Baltimore's numbers in the last month against right-handed pitching, they haven't been the greatest. They've been really solid against lefties all season long. But in terms of OPS against righties, they're ranked 20th in the last 30 days with a 22% strikeout rate. Now, on the other side, if Cole Irvin is in fact the starter for this game, I like Seattle's matchup here against the lefty. Irvin's pitched well. He's definitely pitched in his terms of his role, like the fifth or fourth man in the rotation. A 2.9 ERA is exactly what you're looking for. But I do expect some regression going forward. Seattle's top 15 in OPS and isolated power against lefties in the last 30 days. In fact, they're number 3 in isolated power against lefties. So I think there's a tough matchup here for Irvin. I think Seattle's bullpen can go toe-to-toe with Baltimore's. I actually give the edge to Mariners in the bullpen in this series. So give me Seattle in this one on the money line. Next up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. No official starter for Tampa Bay, but we should see Chris Bassett going for Toronto. Now, Chris Bassett, it's tough to have a lot of faith in his game right now, but I will say his last 2 starts, both quality starts against the Royals and Phillies. And last year, he was a lot better at Rogers Center than he was on the road. I know so far this year, it's been right around the same numbers, both on the road and home. But I think he pitches well in this game. And I also think it's a tough spot here for the Rays, who played in a lot of close games in that Fenway series against the Red Sox, where they used a lot of their relievers. And, some of those guys were unavailable for the final game of this series. And it's going to be tough to pitch them, 3 games in 4 nights or 4 days. In this game. So, right now we don't even know who the official starter is for Tampa Bay. If it's more of a bullpen game, I think even, it's going to be even tougher for this team. So, while the Rays bullpen's improved quite a bit in the last, couple of weeks or so, I still think when you look at the numbers, expected number-wise, one of the weakest bullpens in baseball. I'm going to give the slight advantage to the Blue Jays in this game. I'm going to take them on the money line. Next up, we see the Minnesota Twins taking on the Cleveland Guardians. This is always one of my favorite series to watch. We had Simeon Woods Richardson and Tristan McKenzie as the projected starters. I think I'd like Cleveland's chances a lot more in this game and in this series if they had Stephen Kwan in the lineup. He is just such an important piece of this lineup. He gets on base, obviously, one of the best batting averages usually in the American League, but he also limits strikeouts. He forces a lot of pitches, and he can really work the pitch count for these starting pitchers. And for a guy like Simeon Woods Richardson, who struggled to put away hitters in that last game, I think that Kwan being at the top of the order for the Guardians in this game would really help Cleveland's chances. But to me, I do think the Twins are the better team here. When you look at the bullpens, these are 2 very strong bullpens. I think 2 of the top 5 pens in all of Major League Baseball. When you look at both of these starting pitchers, they've been inconsistent. Woods Richardson, like I mentioned, struggled in that last game against Toronto, but before that, gave up 2 earned runs or fewer in the previous 4 starts. McKenzie had his early season struggles, but recently he's in great form, but he's also faced a pretty weak strength of schedule. The White Sox and the Tigers the last 2 games, and the walks are still a concern from him, giving up 3 or more walks in 3 of his last 5. So for me, I'm going to give the edge to the Minnesota Twins. Similar to that last game, it's not my favorite game on the board. I'm going to lean towards Minnesota here, but give me Twins money line. Next up, the New York Mets taking on the Miami Marlins. Christian Scott and Jesus Luzardo are your projected starters. Scott's pitched well so far. His first 2 outings at the major league level has gone 12 2/3 combined, 4 earned runs with 14 strikeouts. So I like the fact that he's missing bats. The per 9s are all exactly where you want him to be. The walks per 9 pretty low. Home runs per only 1 home run so far. In his last game, while he took the loss for the Mets in that one against Atlanta, that's a very good lineup, and it was still a quality start in the end. So I like what I'm seeing from Scott early. Now he gets to face the weakest lineup yet. He faced the Rays and the Braves in his first 2 games. Now he faced the Marlins, who have been one of the weakest teams in baseball against right-handed pitching this year. On the other side, Luzardo, before the injury, his last start before the injury, pitched well against the Cubs. He went 6 innings, a 2-run ball, quality start, had 6 strikeouts. And then his first start back on May 11th after the injury, 5 2/3 innings, 2 runs, so just 1 out shy of a quality start, 8 strikeouts, no home runs, and only 1 walk given up. Exactly what you want to see from Luzardo. Last year, he was a lot better at Lone Depot Park. He's pitching at Lone Depot here, and he's facing a Mets lineup that we know has really struggled against left-handed pitching recently. Almost, they were no-hit by Max Fried through 7 innings, almost took the no-hitter throughout the full game if it wasn't for J.D. Martinez in the bottom of the 9th. They struggled against Ranger Suarez. They had some sharp contact against Christopher Sanchez, but didn't really do too much with it. So the last few lefty starters that they have faced have pretty much dominated the Mets. And I think Luzardo pitches well in this game, gives them a quality start for the Marlins. So give me the under here in Mets-Marlins. Next up, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the Atlanta Braves. Speaking of Max Fried, he's going in this one for Atlanta, and Matt Waldron, the knuckleballer, will be going for San Diego. Waldron not in great form, and he has struggled overall in 2024. A 1-5 record, 5.49 ERA. Now, his last game against the Dodgers wasn't miserable, but he still gave up 2 earned runs and a home run in 5 1/3 innings. Hasn't really been pitching deep into ball games recently. The walks are starting to pile up. The pitch count's getting up there early in outings, and the Padres have lost 4 of his last 5 games. And while the Braves have not been as potent against righties as they used to be, they still are one of the best lineups in baseball. And with Max Fried on the other side facing a Padres team that has been miserable against lefties in recent games, we talked about how James Paxton, who has an expected ERA above 6, or had an expected ERA above 6 going into that game against San Diego, had a dominant outing. Then Austin Gomber, who has had his struggles against San Diego in his career, he goes out and throws a gem. San Diego against lefties is no bueno for me right now, and I got to go with the Atlanta Braves in this one, laying the 1.5 runs. Next up, the Oakland Athletics taking on the Kansas City Royals. No official starter for Oakland, but we should see Cole Reagans going for the Royals. Cole Reagans, it's definitely been a disappointing season for him so far. He was expected to be that number 1 ace by far in this Royals rotation. So far, he's 2-3 with a 4.22 ERA. I think he's been rather unlucky to start the year. The expected numbers would tell you that. All expected ERA, FIP, xFIP, pretty solid numbers. His last game against the Angels, obviously struggled. 6 1/3 innings. He was able to go deep in the ballgame and give the Royals some innings, but 8 base hits, 7 earned runs, a home run, and only the 3 strikeouts. That's a concern. And against an Angels team that we know a big losing record, it's not what you want to see. And now you're facing Oakland's lineup. It's been really solid against lefties this year, power-wise, and even OPS-wise recently. They're starting to improve there. It's not going to be the easiest matchup, but I'm still going to go with the Royals in this game. I still believe in Reagans in terms of the long term. I think he's going to be a really good option in this Royals rotation for years to come. And the Royals are also just a much better team at home. On the road this season, they've been right around 500, but at home they're 15-8 this year. Their offense has much better numbers at home. I think, Oakland, we don't know the official starter. While the bullpen's been good, it's been more so the 8th, 9th inning guys like Mason Miller. I don't really trust their, long relievers. If this is a bullpen game, I think the Royals will be able to take advantage. So give me the Kansas City Royals in this game on the run line. Next up, the Los Angeles Angels taking on the Texas Rangers. We're going to see Tyler Anderson and Andrew Heaney as your starters. We just talked about how the Angels got to a strong lefty option in Cole Reagans, and facing Andrew Heaney, who has been one of the least profitable pitchers in baseball this year. Who the Rangers have only won 1 of his starts this season. That was against the Oakland A's. To me, while the Angels is not fun backing this team with how their bullpen's been, I got to take a shot here with Los Angeles. Anderson's in good form. The Rangers have not been great against lefties offensively. Like I mentioned with Heaney, the Rangers are now 1-7 in his first 8 starts to the year. He's 0-4 personally. The Angels bullpen, believe it or not, has better expected numbers in terms of xFIP compared to the Rangers bullpen this year. So for me, add it all up, I know the Rangers are a very good home team, but they have not been playing great baseball recently, and I think the value lies with the Angels in this one. Give me the Angels plus 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Houston Astros. Freddie Peralta and Hunter Brown are your starters. For me, Hunter Brown, the situation with him this season really reminds me of what we've seen with Trevor Rogers. 2 young starting pitchers that's really struggled, basically disaster starts to 2024 with Browns get that 0-4 record, 7.79 ERA, but we've seen both of these guys pitch at really high levels in this league. Hunter Brown's first 20 1/3 innings in his first season, he had a .89 ERA, strikeout numbers were through the roof. And even at the beginning of last year, he pitched well. We saw him struggle towards the end and have that ERA above 5. But I'm not ready to give up on Hunter Brown. I wasn't really ready to give up on Trevor Rogers. It was tough to back him at that point because he had put together a few really rough outings before that last game against Detroit. But we knew Rogers has his stuff. We know Brown has his stuff and the potential. And now we're starting to see Brown put it together recently. In the last couple of games, combined 9 1/3 innings, 3 earned runs. So an ERA below 3 in the last couple of games. 12 strikeouts, only 1 home run given up. He's been a lot sharper recently. Now, he's not pitching deep into ball games, but he's also been a lot better at Minute Maid Park than he has been on the road. He gets to pitch home here. The Brewers are not an easy matchup against right-handed pitching, but I think Hunter Brown does enough here to keep the Astros competitive in this game. Freddie Peralta recently, while he's a great starting pitching option, and he's had a great season overall, 8 base hits in that last game against St. Louis. He only went 5 innings the previous game against the Cubs, gave up 3 runs and lost that game for Milwaukee. 6 walks to go with it. To me, he's not in the best or sharpest of form either. 6 earned runs his last 11 innings of work. The Astros are improving offensively. Their bullpen has also really improved. We know that it was just a nightmare at the beginning of the season for the Astros bullpen, but now it's right around the middle of the pack in terms of expected numbers in the ERA. I'm going to take the Astros in this game on the money line. We're getting really good prices with Houston because of their early season struggles, because of their win-loss record. I'm not ready to say that this is not one of the better teams in the American League on paper just because of the first 20, 30 games. I'm going to go with the Houston Astros, take them on the money line. Next up, we see the Boston Red Sox taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. We're going to see Brian Bayo and Kyle Gibson as the projected starters. Kyle Gibson's pitched well this season after a pretty rough start to the regular season with his new team. I mean, his last 5 games, 2 earned runs or fewer in all 5 of those starts. The strikeout numbers have been there. He's only given up 1 home run along the way. The walks are a little bit of a concern. He does have some control issues, but he's in solid form. We know the Cardinals had a big series offensively against the Angels this past week where they lost the final game of the series but scored 19 runs in those 3 games. That was the big problem for St. Louis. The rotation has inconsistencies, but the bullpen was really solid. The lineup just wasn't getting it done. But now we see St. Louis kind of have a breakout series against LA. You're facing a Red Sox team who, Bayo's last game wasn't his best. A Red Sox bullpen that I mentioned, against the Rays, a lot of close games, extra inning game. Their bullpen's been worked pretty heavily recently, especially with how many bullpen games this team does. So for me, I'm going to give the edge to St. Louis in this one. I'm going to take them on the money line. Then Gibson continues to pitch well, and the Cardinals grab a W. Next up, we see the Detroit Tigers taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Tarek Skubal and Ryan Nelson are your starters. Diamondbacks have been very strong against lefties this season and in the last month, but you might be facing the best lefty in baseball in this one, and Tarek Skubal, who's right now got a 5-0 record with a 2.02 ERA, 60 strikeouts, and 49 innings of work. A .86 whip is the 3rd best in baseball. He's also been excellent on the road. He's been even better away from Comerica Park. 2-0 with a 1.0 ERA, 18 innings of work, and 27 strikeouts. No walks given up on the road yet this year. With Ryan Nelson struggled at Chase Field, an ERA just below 6, and struggles overall. I mean, the last game against the Orioles, somehow he only gave up 3 runs. He gave up 10 base hits in that game and a home run, but it was still a competitive game for Arizona. But I don't like the current form right now for Nelson. 18 base hits in his last 9 2/3 innings. I'm going to go with the Detroit Tigers in this one on the money line. Next up, we see the Cincinnati Reds taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. We're going to see Frankie Montas and James Paxton as the starters. The Cincinnati Reds have been one of the weakest lineups of baseball against lefties in the last month and really overall this season. But James Paxton, he's got that 2.58 ERA, a 5-0 record on paper. It looks stellar, but the expected numbers are very steep. And in my opinion, I don't think he ends the season if he pitches the entire year with an ERA below 4. I think that there's regression on the horizon here for James Paxton with a 5.89 expected ERA, 5.6 xFIP, and a Sierra above 6. The Reds might not be the team because of, like I said, their lefty struggles, and Paxton has been a lot better at Dodger Stadium, but I still think that there's value on an over in this game because Frankie Montas, I think the Dodgers could score the total over themselves because he's last game 4 earned runs, 5 total runs against San Francisco. That's a struggling lineup. The Dodgers now, one of the best lineups in baseball against righties all season long. I think we see a higher scoring game here. I'm going to go with the over in Reds-Dodgers. Next up, we see the Colorado Rockies taking on the San Francisco Giants. Looks like Ryan Feltner and Kyle Harrison are going to be your starters. And for me, I say, how can you not take the Rockies in this game? They're arguably one of the hottest teams in baseball. They won the final game of this Giants series at Coors Field. Then they swept the Rangers at Coors. Then they go on the road, no days off, and they sweep the Padres on the road, who San Diego had taken 2 of 3 against the Dodgers previously. So the Rockies are playing really, their best baseball this season, obviously by far. Their offense is the big key there. They scored 5, 6, and 8 against the Padres in that 3-game set. And they just faced Kyle Harrison. While they didn't have much success against him in that game, they were making some sharp contact. And I think the second time through, they'll be able to get to him. Feltner has the advantage of not having to he didn't face the Giants in that last series. His last game against the Rangers, really solid lineup. 6 innings, 2 runs, and a win for Colorado. Quality start there. He's really improved his game. So give me the Rockies in this one, plus the 1.5 and on the money line in this game. And that's it. Those are the games for Friday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe and put those baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.